Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. Today we're going to have some fun. We have Erica Ballard here with us, and she is the founder of Erica Ballard Health, a wellness company that helps people get healthy despite their busy schedules. Now, I know in COVID, you're all hanging out at home and you have more time in your hands. Not so much, right? You've got kids at home, you've got homeschooling, all these crazy things going on. And oftentimes what happens is our health is what falls by the wayside, self-care. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to explore some of the, just unpacking that. What does it mean to be healthy? How can you do it? Dispel some myths. So I'm really excited to have her here. Erica, welcome to Leaders of Transformation.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I want to do a shout out before we forget to Julie Kratz. Thank you, Julie. She's amazing. She's been on this show. I've been on her show, and she actually introduced us. So thank you, Julie. And yes, I am excited to have you here. Also excited to have the listeners here. We're going to have some fun today. And let's just start off with the myth about getting healthy. What is the biggest myth that's out there, specifically when we're talking about busy professionals and they say, yeah, I know I need to do all these things, but talk about what it is and how you dispel it.
So the biggest myth I think that's out there right now is that it's just a calories game, that losing weight is just a calories game. That would be saying that this body is a math problem. Like it's just a formula in and out. This thing is so freaking complicated that we in science don't even know how all the things in it operate. So to distill it down to, well, you just got to move more and eat less. No, because so many of us do that and we don't drop weight. And so many of us do that and we gain weight. And the reason for it is, like, when you boil it down to the core, yes, you need to be eating an appropriate amount of calories in your system. But until you get to a place where you can burn fat appropriately, your calories kind of don't matter. And yet we have been told, oh, just focus on that. Oh, just focus on that. But no, do that and fail, as 93% of people do.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, personally, I'm very simple. I'm a simple, I'm just kidding. All the women are going, I'm simple. I'm not complicated at all. Right. All the guys are saying, sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that you say that because I've always been very athletic and healthy, health conscious and so forth. And I'm 48. So I'm kind of moving through this new life stage, life change. And what worked isn't working so much. I mean, it's kind of working. It's keeping it at bay, but it's not for the amount of extra effort that I'm putting in. It's actually not creating the result that it might have when I was 30. And so I totally get what you're saying, is this idea of counting calories and working out harder and more hikes and all of that. It just hasn't quite worked. So how do we do it? What do we need to know?
So there's a few things. I think the first is understanding how your body operates and the fact that food is information. So when we eat, what you're putting in your body is literally telling your brain and your body what's going on in the world. And if you're eating things that are sugary and super carby and all this, you're telling your body we need quick fuel. Things are stressed out. Things aren't the best that they need to be, because that's quick energy, that's quick hit. That's the stuff that your body would crave during stressful periods. So when you're putting stuff like that in it, it's working against you. What you really want to be doing, if you truly are looking not only to drop weight, but to optimize your health, is to focus on real food. And every single time I say that, people are like, okay, great, whole grains. No, like vegetables and protein and quality fats. Like, if you were to just eat those things 85% of the time, drink wine, eat cake, eat chocolate, do whatever for the other 15% of the time, and just focus on doing your best for those things 85%, it would be ridiculous the amount of results you would get, because weight loss is 80% food, 20% movement, and so is health. So that's why we say food is medicine. It's not movement is medicine, it's food is medicine, right? So that's number one, first and foremost. The second is to look at your stress. You mentioned self-care when we came on in the beginning, and I can give you all the best health advice. I can tell you about intermittent fasting. I can tell you what vegetables do to your body. I can help you figure out like the right lifting schedule, whatever. But if you are stressed out, none of it matters. None of it. Because when you are stressed out, your body goes into survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, you cannot burn fat. You cannot thrive. Your brain is not working. Like your digestion is off. Literally, blood is moving away from the executive functioning in your brain. So you can't even do things like that you could before. So when I think about health, those are the two things is one, how do we get real food in our diet? How do you do that in a way that feels really good? And second, how the heck do you reduce your stress? And what are the small steps? Because so many people, they're like, I'm bad at meditating and da da da. And it's like, it's okay. Start small, build up. And from there, I think you can start to look at sleep and movement and things of that nature where it gets I wouldn't say a little bit more complicated, but a little bit more nuanced. Intermittent fasting, stuff like that. But get your foundation set, then go and overcomplicate health. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you talk about stress is because I noticed this for myself when I was super stressed. It showed up in my body for sure. Now I know some people gain weight when they're stressed, some people lose weight when they're stressed, and I'd love your input on that. But what I was going to say is that there was a point where like I knew I was stressed, and then I was like, okay, I'm relaxing myself. I'm good now. Like I'm not stressed. And yet at the same time, it's like, I'm not stressed, damn it, and yet at the same time, I think there's a lot of people that don't even realize how stressed they are. So they would say, I'm not stressed. And in fact, actually their body would say, oh, yes, you are. So how do you help people to become aware of what is kind of like going beyond that line and saying, this is stress?
That is such a good question and such a good point because I actually was giving a talk yesterday and I said, how many people, like, what's your stress level? And people were like, oh, it's like a 6. And I looked at them. I was like, no, I'm looking at you. And there's no way that's true. A lot of us, we run at a 10 and then we just add 6 on because we're so used to this feeling of like, gotta go. And so there's a couple ways I think you can become acutely aware of to deal with and become aware of your stress. So from a dealing with perspective, I really recommend taking 5 to 10 minutes out of your day, a few times throughout the day, and just moving your body. Because what is stress? It's energy. And when it's not moved out, it's stagnant energy. Because you got to think when we used to get stressed out, it's because we were going to fight or run from a bear. So your body is literally pumping out cortisol, adrenaline, all of this stuff, like making glucose, getting ready for you to fight or run. And when you don't do that, it just sits. So if you move, if you do the thing that it is expecting you to do, you can move that stagnant energy out, which will then allow you to come down. And so that's the first thing I always recommend. And when people say to me, and I'm just going to say it, if anyone's like, I don't have 30 minutes a day. If you don't have 30 minutes a day, you better get a life. Because you should. And I don't like to use the word should on on most things, but if you don't have 30 minutes to do you better reevaluate everything that's going on in your life. So step 1,
Agreed.
Feel very strongly
Absolutely.
about that.
Yes.
And then the second piece is, taking deep breaths throughout the day. But first, before you take those deep breaths, where are you on the stress scale? Are you at a 5, 6, 7, 8? Take a few deep breaths, maybe even like a minute or two, and then evaluate where you are after those deep breaths. Where you are after those deep breaths, that's where you want to sit when you're doing the work. That's where you want to sit when you're living your life most of the time, because that's when your brain is truly at its most powerful. And so that helps people get really aware of where they are. And the last thing I would just say, and this is what I do, and I don't know if you do this, but I check in with myself at least weekly. I mean, daily, but like definitely weekly. What was my stress levels like? Was I serving people the way I wanted to? Did I show up? What were time wasters? What were time sucks? And I just evaluate how I did. for myself, not for anyone else, how I did for myself that week. And that'll start to give you data, because really stress, to your point, is where I think you were going. And I love it, is it's self-awareness game. And P.S. that's what all health is about. Like, it's just a self-awareness game, and it's getting you in touch with your body, because that's the meat suit we live in, right? So you got to get in there. So those are the three things when people are like, I don't even know how stressed out I am. I don't even know how to do it. Well, here's how you manage it. And then here's how you test it to see if you're going in the right direction or if you're not. And if you're not, all you got to do is find another way. And there's tons of tools out there, to do that.
Yeah. I remember one of my mentors, he was doing a 7-day event. I was there, and he was, one of the things he talked about, of course, mindfulness, mindset, peak performance, but in the context of that, of course, mindset and all these different things. And he said, here's an example of when I know that I'm stressed and or need clearing. I need to clear my energy. He said, this morning, for example, I was having a hard time getting my shirt out of the closet. Like, the hanger was getting caught by the other hangers. And he's like, I'm getting irritated by it. And I'm going, wait a second, why am I irritated? So to that point, that's what I noticed about myself. If I am getting irritated by the little things, if I'm on the road and I'm going, come on, like, hurry up, right? Why are you driving so slow in the left lane, or whatever, or I'm in the grocery store and I'm annoyed by the people around me. To me, that's like a huge red flag that I've already gone way over into that stress zone. And of course, my body, my tension, and my shoulders and those kinds of things. And yeah, but it is self-awareness. And there was a point where I didn't know that I didn't know. And coming back to talk about your body and being self-aware of your body, I didn't know that my body was trying to tell me where I was at, and I wasn't listening. And so I'm like, I'm fine, man. I got this. I hear so many people say that, like, I got this. I got to hustle. I got to work hard. I got to make things happen. That peak performance, that's what peak performance is. And it's like, oh, no. Peak performance isn't struggling and being in that place of just tension, right? It's being actually in flow. So can you talk about some of the foods, like you mentioned about vegetables, and I know some people don't like vegetables. I love vegetables. And in fact, actually, it was funny, and I did not plan this before this interview, but last week I was kind of like, I'm going to try a few different other things, a little bit more eating out. I was so tired. I was like, why am I so tired? And then I looked back and I went, oh, you're tired because you haven't been eating your salads and blah, blah, blah. You've been eating whatever else, right? Burritos from Rubio's kind of thing. And so I know there's like certain foods that are, like you said, vegetables, but let's talk specifically about some great foods to be incorporating. And how do you incorporate that in? And we're talking also about busy professionals. How do you incorporate that into a busy schedule? Professionals, busy families with kids on Zoom and doing all the things that they're doing, all the crazy stuff that's going on in the world right now. How do they incorporate these things in? So what and how?
So from a what perspective, I'll break down vegetables, protein, and healthy fats. So from a vegetable perspective, really at the end of the day, anything grown above the ground is going to be incredible for everybody, and particularly for people who are looking to drop weight, because I know a lot of people, that's what they ask me. Above the ground is really your sweet spot. Things below the ground, like sweet potatoes, tubers, all that stuff's great too. It's just dependent upon what your goals are, because as your body changes, what it needs changes. So once you get to where you want to be, right, then it's a different discussion of what you eat. But I would say, like, blanket across the board, vegetables grown above the ground are great for everybody. Vegetables grown, under the ground, tubers, things like that, they're great for everybody, but in moderation, really, 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 if you're looking to drop weight. And for what it's worth, I think local produce is where it's at. You're going to get things with the least amount of pesticides. You're going to get the things that are most nutrient dense and supporting the local economy and minerals and soil and all that stuff. So where possible, do that. If you're like, girl, I'm just trying to eat some vegetables, get whatever you can get. Don't be weird about it. Just get whatever you can get. Now, from a protein standpoint, you really want to, if funds allow, to be looking at sustainable meat and wild caught fish, because I believe you are what you eat. And if your cow is eating something it's not supposed to eat, like we do in feedlot cows, then you're going to take in a cow that's not optimal, which doesn't allow you to be optimal. But from also, if you are a vegetarian or vegan, non-GMO, organic, tofu, tempeh, that stuff is really, really great too. And there, I wouldn't, when we say meat too, I mean, I'm talking poultry, I'm talking red meat, I'm talking pork, all of it, as long as it's sustainably and locally grown, I think you're in the best spot for it. The third thing is high quality fats. And this is it's very controversial, but it really shouldn't be, because there's nothing controversial about it. Like, you want high quality fats, and those are, from a oil perspective, you're looking at coconut oils, avocado oils, let's say olive oil, coconut oils, avocado oils, grass-fed butters, grass-fed ghees, things of that nature. And then your other fats from a food perspective are going to be like dark chocolate 70 and above. They're going to be nuts. They're going to be salmon. They're going to be avocados, things like that. And that's really where you want us to be spending the majority of your time. For people who are like, but I love my whole grains, they're part of a healthy diet. They can be, if you are where you want to be. If you are exactly where you want to be, 1,000%. Or if you've dropped weight and you've plateaued, that's when you introduce grains back in. That's when you do it. But up until that point, like, do the things that I said. Because I keep harping on it, but when your body changes, what it needs changes. And I think that we're all like, well, but this is what I want to do. And this is what the internet said. And this is what my friend's doing. And it's like, this thing is 2,000 plus years old. You got to eat the food that it ate 2,000 plus years old, 2,000 plus years ago, to really get it to be at its optimal. And then you get to play and add in all the other things. And if people are like, well, what about fruit? Yeah, have fruit, don't have fruit. I'm not going to harp on it, because if you're overweight, the banana is not your problem. So have it or don't have it. It's totally cool. And so then your question was, how do you do it as a busy professional? And I tell people, make it really convenient. So order off of Amazon, order off of Prime, bring that stuff to your house. Like I said, local, but if you can't do local, don't. But also know that you can order things local to your house, because COVID had a lot of things that went wrong, but the thing that it had right was we all figured out delivery, So I think making sure that that is really simple. And if you don't like vegetables, eat the vegetables you do like, because there's probably things that you do like. You probably like spinach, or you probably like broccoli, or you probably like carrots. Start there. And then build, because your palate will naturally shift. It takes about 3 weeks for your palate to shift. So if you start to eat those foods, you will like things more. Like, I used to hate beets. Oh my God. I thought they tasted like dirt. If you gave me one, I would just be so mad, and I would pick them out of everything. Now I love beets, but it's because I started eating quinoa and chard and things within the beet family that allowed me to like it. Now, it took more than 3 weeks for me to get to on the beet train, but it's to show how quickly your palate can shift. And then from a kid perspective, what I would say is be open to interactive meals. The lazy Susan is so wonderful. Like, the concept of it, like, let them make their own tacos and let you make your own tacos, so that you can put vegetables on and they can't if they don't want it, or they can try it. Or if you're making a stir fry, put them in different bowls so you can make them together. There's something really fun about kids being in with their food. And also for you can have more broccoli, right? You can set that up the way that you want it to. And so I always tell my clients, look to make it as easy as humanly possible. We get these things where, like, well, if I don't buy the food with my hands, prep it myself and cook it, it's not healthy. And that is not true anymore. It's just not. If you have the means to get things to your house through Amazon, through Freshly, through that, do that. And if you don't, make space in your schedule, because again, if you don't have a half an hour in your day, you better reevaluate everything. And you can take 2 half hours and make it 1 on a Sunday and get your butt to the grocery store. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, I have this rule: when I go and buy vegetables, I don't put them in the crisper. My friend actually calls it the rotter, because, like, she'll put stuff in there and then it just stays in there, it just never quite gets it out onto the
Mm.
table. And so what I figured out is that if I wash it and clean it and make sure it's all ready to go, it's just easier. So when I want to make a salad, it only takes 5 minutes. Boom, 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 I'm done. And put some protein on there and you're ready to go. And so, yeah, I'm a big believer in the quick and easy. Coming back to the whole idea of stress, because I know that, like I said, some people gain weight when they're stressed. Some people lose weight. Why is that? What's the difference?
So oftentimes when people lose weight when they're stressed, it's because they're not eating. Like, how there are people who are overeat or undereat when they're stressed out, people who don't eat at all. And there's people who will go like truly like almost a whole day and they can just peck. They're starving themselves and they're doing it inadvertently, but they're doing it multiple days on end because most stress, we're built for acute stress. A lot of people run very stressed for very long. And so that's why that's happening. They're starving themselves and they're not putting the nutrients and their body's just shedding. Your body hates that and it will stop. And if you go back to eating, which you should, because we have to do it to survive, your body usually puts on 5 more pounds. Like, you ever notice when you go on a diet and you starve yourself and then your body always adds on 5, 10 more pounds? It's because you keep going to this desert island and your body's like, why does she keep going back there? She keeps going back. So I'm going to keep adding weight because she can't seem to figure out how not to do that. So that's why that happens. Now, from a gaining weight perspective, I think this is really interesting, is we have 4 times as many cortisol receptors in our stomach than anywhere else in our body. That's why also our stress tends to be belly fat, because when you get really stressed out, your body literally gets primed to take energy and move it to your stomach. Like, it's what it does. And so usually when we're stress eat, no one's like, I really want that kale salad, right? We're like, I want the donut. I want the potato chips. I want these essentially really carby things. And your body says, okay, cool, eat them. And then I'm going to shove them into your stomach and they're going to hold there. And so that's why we gain the weight, is because your body is literally primed to take this energy and put it there, because that's where the cortisol receptors live, because it's actually fairly easy to get it off when you don't need it. And so it allows it to be like when you're stressed out, your body is pulling everything into the middle, right, to keep it safe. And so when you're out of that state, your body's like, oh, we can shed it, but you just got to learn how to shed it appropriately for it to get there. But it doesn't want it there, so it will. So that was a long answer because there's a lot of science and I'm trying to make it like really trying to condense it. But does that make sense for like why all this stuff happens? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very interesting. I'd never heard that. That's very interesting. And the other question I had for you, I'm kind of grilling you with all these different, like, oh, yeah, what about this? What about that? Is the idea of eating. So there's three meals a day. And then there's the other philosophy, 5, 6 meals a day, smaller meals. There's don't eat after 6. There's kind of like that. That's kind of like intermittent fasting, if you will, right? Getting that time, that 12 hours at least. Yeah, what is your approach to that? What has worked best? And everybody's different. I get it that, like you said, everybody's body's different, needs different things. But.
Yeah. So there's that. So prefacing all with is an N of 1. So definitely experiment on yourself. That being said, there's obviously guidelines, right? And so if your goal is to drop weight and increase your energy, 3 meals a day, or 2 or 3. So intermittent fast or eat 3 meals a day with almost no snacks. This is why your great grandparents could eat like pancakes and all that bread and be able to drop weight. They're like, how do they do it? They gave their body their insulin a break, because that's really at the root of a lot of our issues with our weight, is that our insulin is too high. Insulin is the fat storage hormone. So the more often that's floating in your system, obviously the more often you store fat. So when you don't eat, it goes down and you give it a break. But when you do eat, it goes back up, particularly if we're eating these these 100-calorie snack packs, or like for me, like I live in the US, like the standard American diet, right? tends to have a lot of things that would up your insulin. So you're always having this fat storage hormone hanging out. So that's why you want to do the 3 meals a day or 2, because it allows your body time to bring the insulin down, which then trains your body to use fat as fuel if it runs out of sugar or food as fuel. The reason, though, you would do 5 or 6 meals is if you wanted to build muscle. So my husband, God bless him, he eats like 3,000 calories a day. He's 6 foot, and he's working out a ton, and he wants to get jacked. He's doing a great job. I'm a very lucky wife, right? But like, he eats all the time because he needs that energy to constantly be rebuilding his muscles. That's really where you want to do it. And then occasionally there's places where, like, if you have thyroid issues and things of that nature, you're going to want to have it. But for most people, 2 to 3 meals is where you want to be. And just because you mentioned intermittent fasting, or the 12-hour piece, I should say, everyone across the board, unless you're pregnant, wants 12 hours between dinner and breakfast, because your body needs to clear out food. Like, it needs that space. And so that, I think, is a must universally, except for if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, and then 2-3 meals, unless you're trying to like bulk up.
Yeah, that's a great point, because my mother used to not eat all day, and then she would eat this big meal at the end of the day. Or my brother, I was talking to him recently about this, and he wants to lose weight. And I said, don't eat after 6 o'clock, because that's what he would do. And he'd eat this big meal, steak and whatever, and then go to bed. I'm like, yeah. So talk about what happens in your body when you do that, because I think there's just a lot of people who are busy, don't have time to eat, right? They say that. And then they get to 9 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, and whenever they're done, and then they grab something to eat, they're exhausted, and they go to bed. And then they wonder why they're not operating at that peak performance and having that productivity the next day.
Yep. I hate the phrase, I don't have time to eat. I'm like, you did not prioritize it. And that was foolish, but we'll get to that. But from a food perspective, from a dinner perspective, you actually want to have, I'd say 3 is ideal, but 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed is when you want to have your last meal. So if you're going to bed at 10, you want to have minimum done by 8, ideally 6 or 7 is when you want your last food, because it takes, like, the meat of digestion happens in the first 3 or 4 hours. Okay. And the thing is about digestion is that is a survival mechanism. Like, that's a higher priority for your body than detoxifying and repairing. And this comes into issue is when you go to bed with a big meal, you will die if you don't digest that food appropriately. You won't die if your body doesn't repair and detoxify. And sleep is the time your body gives, like, oh, what do we need to clean up? What do we need to do? Like, let's move things through your system. But if it has to digest your food, it will focus on that, and it will not do the things that sleep is actually meant for. So then you wake up feeling groggy and off, and then you repeat this cycle because the things haven't moved through you in the appropriate way. And that is what one of the first places I am with all of my clients really is, like, can we get you away from slamming a meal and going to bed? Because it will mess up your rhythm for the rest of your day, because your body has to choose digesting food first. But that's not the point of sleep. The point of sleep is to rest, repair, and detoxify.
Awesome. Caffeine. Let's talk about caffeine and what that does to all of this in the mix. I've never been a coffee drinker, but my mother had it on, like, practically on intravenous, and I know a lot of people do.
So coffee's not good or bad, or caffeine in and of itself, and particularly natural sources like this conversation, I want to be clear, excludes Red Bulls and Monsters. Stop drinking that shit. Sorry. I'm like, just bring it out. Like, don't do that. But for coffee, matchas, things of that nature, caffeine isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it can be for a lot of people. So I, for the past 3 days, have tried to drink caffeine again for no reason. I was just like, I miss matcha. It does a number on me. My body freaking hates it. I feel it come up my neck. My arms get tingly, and I don't pop up the next morning. it's me and caffeine don't work well. Some people unaffected for the most part, like their body can just metabolize it well. And there's benefits, there is actually benefits to coffee. It's a bitter taste. It helps move things through your body. There is antioxidants, all the same things with like matcha and those type of teas. That being said, if you have trouble sleeping, which I think is most people, is if you're drinking coffee all day, it's probably you drinking coffee all day. You can say, oh, it doesn't affect me, but it does. Like, you're not even like, you don't even know how your body operates. And I'm not trying to sound fresh here, but like most of us are completely disassociated with this thing that we call our body. So you don't even know if it affects you because you don't know how you feel. So to tell me that it doesn't affect you, I'm saying, unless you're super self-aware and you've been doing the work and have defined health for yourself and don't tell me that. And more so, this is science. It takes about 8 hours for caffeine to fully leave your system. So if you have coffee at 3, it is going to be very difficult to go to bed by 11, which is a big problem because if you are not in bed by 10, that's when your second wind kicks. That's just the way that our bodies are wired to do it. It's like, why would she be up that late? Must be something. And so it kicks on, that extra adrenaline or cortisol, or like just pumps that through. And so, yeah, caffeine, not good or bad. It's good or bad for you, but 2:00 should be the absolute latest that you have it, especially if you have trouble sleeping.
Yeah, that's great. Erica, this has been so good, practical. We wanted it to be that. I wanted to be able to help our listeners who are struggling in some of these areas. And I'm hearing a lot about this, especially this year, but it's not new. People have been struggling with this for a while. And so I just really appreciate it. Like, this is great. This has been really great. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that is important to cover before we wrap up?
The one thing I want to mention is just the brain-gut connection. So the fact that your brain and gut are connected. And I say that because, we all want to be healthy. I mean, truly, I believe all of us really do want to get healthier, but we can't find the time, all of these different things. And for people who are peak performers, people who are leaders, people who are really overachievers, who are trying to be the best at what they're doing, which I have to assume is your listeners, is that your brain and gut are connected. And because of that, what you eat directly affects how you think. And that means that if you're not minding the food that you put in your body, you never really will be at your best. And a lot of people, when I say this, are like, well, I do get so much done, even though I don't eat that well. And to all those people, I've said this 1,000 times, but I'm going to say it again, is that you're only in second gear. Imagine what fifth gear looks like. Imagine it, and then turn it into reality by actually taking care of the vehicle that will get you there.
Amen to that. I love it. Fifth gear, sixth gear. Come on, let's do this. So yes, thank you, Erica. I appreciate it. For our listeners, go to ericaballardhealth.com. You can find out more and talk to Erica if you have some questions in this area. You need some coaching. You need somebody to help you get whipped into shape and into a healthy state so you can be at that fifth and sixth gear. Then reach out to her. I highly recommend it. And we only have one body. This is it, right? Like, we're not getting another one. We can't go to the store and trade it in. You can do modifications, but that's a whole other podcast. But the reality is, when we're talking about, we only have one body, and we need to take care of it because it's what's going to carry you around. And so it's worth the time. You're worth the time to do that. So make it a priority. If you don't, the unfortunate thing about it, here's the other side of this. If you don't make health a priority, at some point you will be required to make it a priority because you'll be in recovery. And that is not, you don't want to go there. And it's actually more costly and difficult to recover than it is to maintain. So with that said, go check out Erica's information. She's got lots of great material on her website. Erica, thank you for being here. Thank you to our listeners for being here. All of the details and links will be, of course, on the leadersoftransformation.com. So you can go there and find her there as well. And if you like this, please share this with a friend. If you have a friend who is busy and who has said some of the things that we've been talking about, I don't have time to take care of myself, I don't like veggies, is overdosing on caffeine late at night, eating late, whatever, you know what, share this with them and help them to get on the right path so that they can get healthy as well. So please share it. If you like it, if you like this episode, please leave us a rating review. It does help us to get a greater reach, and we appreciate you supporting us in that way. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.